In the vast darkness of the galaxy, thousands of intelligent species had already found each other. Empires had risen, alliances had formed, and wars had reshaped entire star systems. The Galactic Council ruled as the center of diplomacy and order. Every powerful civilization eventually appeared there. And then, humanity arrived. When the human representatives first walked into the Grand Council chamber, many alien delegates stared in quiet curiosity. Humans were smaller than most species. They had no claws, no armored skin, no glowing eyes that showed strength. Compared to many of the warriors of the galaxy, they looked almost fragile. Some species even whispered among themselves. Is this the famous Death World species? Others seemed disappointed. For a species that came from a dangerous planet called Earth, humans did not look impressive at all. Earth was known in galactic records as a Class 12 Death World. Its gravity was higher than most civilized planets. Its oceans were violent. Its storms could destroy cities. Its animals were fast, strong, and often deadly. Most species from such planets evolved into brutal warriors. But humans did not act like warriors. Instead, they smiled. They spoke politely. They offered trade deals. They shared art, music, and strange food that fascinated many alien cultures. Within a few years, human merchants were traveling through many star systems, building friendships and business partnerships. They avoided conflicts. They rarely argued during council meetings. They did not threaten anyone. To many powerful empires, humans seemed harmless. Some races even started joking about them. They are too soft for the galaxy, one delegate once said during a private conversation. Another replied, maybe death worlds make them tired of fighting. The nickname slowly spread through the council chambers. The quiet species. Humans did not respond to the jokes. They simply continued their work. They built research stations. They helped repair damaged trade routes. They assisted weaker colonies that had been ignored by larger empires. Slowly, human influence spread across nearby systems, not through conquest, but through cooperation. Many smaller species respected them. But the great military powers of the galaxy did not. To them, power meant fleets, weapons, and fear. And humans showed none of those things. One empire in particular watched humanity with growing amusement. The Karn Dominion. The Karn were massive reptilian warriors who ruled dozens of systems through strength alone. Their ships were enormous, covered in heavy weapons and thick armor. Their armies had conquered many civilizations over centuries. To the Karn, respect only came from power. And humans looked powerless. During one Galactic Council meeting, a Karn warlord stood up and openly mocked the human ambassador in front of everyone. His deep voice echoed across the chamber. You speak of peace and cooperation, the warlord growled. But peace is what weak species ask for when they cannot defend themselves. Several alien delegates became uncomfortable. Insulting another species so openly was rare in council meetings. But the human ambassador did not show anger. He simply looked at the Karn warlord calmly. Peace is a choice, the human said quietly. Not a weakness. The Karn warlord laughed loudly. To him, those words sounded like surrender. Many other powerful species secretly agreed. They had studied human ships and technology. Nothing looked particularly advanced. Their weapons appeared ordinary compared to the massive energy cannons used by galactic war fleets. Human vessels looked simple. Almost outdated. And so the galaxy reached a quiet conclusion. Humans were friendly. Humans were cooperative. But humans were not dangerous. Far away from the council chambers, however, human engineers were working on something the galaxy barely understood. A weapon based on simple physics. A weapon that did not rely on energy beams or plasma. A weapon powered by magnetic force and unimaginable speed. Most alien scientists had dismissed the design as inefficient. Humans had not. Deep inside several human warships, massive electromagnetic rails stretched across reinforced hulls. Magnetic coils were tested again and again. Calculations were repeated. Power systems were upgraded. The weapon was simple, but terrifying. Still, humanity never demonstrated it. They never threatened anyone with it. They kept it quiet. For many years, the galaxy continued believing the same thing. Humans were peaceful. Humans were gentle. Humans were harmless. And the Karn Dominion believed that more than anyone. That belief would soon lead them to make the worst mistake in their empire's history. Because when the Karn finally decided to test humanity, the quiet species would answer. And when that answer came, the galaxy would hear the sound of a weapon it had never truly feared before. The sound of a human railgun firing for the first time in war. For many years the Karn Dominion watched human space with quiet interest. At first it was only curiosity. Then it became amusement. And finally, it became something more dangerous. Contempt. The Karn were warriors born from a harsh world of volcanic mountains and brutal predators. Strength was everything in their culture. If a species could not defend itself, the Karn believed it deserved to be ruled. And when they looked at humanity, they saw a perfect target. Human fleets were small. Their colonies were spread across peaceful systems. They traded more than they fought. Even their military ships looked modest compared to the massive Karn war cruisers. To the Karn warlords, the conclusion was simple. Humans were weak. One particular system caught their attention. A young human colony called New Horizon. New Horizon was not a military base. It was a mining world located near the edge of human space. Thousands of workers lived there, extracting rare metals from the planet's crust. Cargo ships came and went every day, carrying resources to nearby human worlds. The colony had only light defenses. Perfect for a demonstration. The Karn warlord Draxier believed this would be an easy victory. More importantly, it would send a message to the entire galaxy. Humans could not protect their own territory. Inside the command chamber of the Karn flagship, Draxier stared at the holographic map of the system. "Deploy the fleet," he ordered. Moments later, space above New Horizon began to change. First came the shadows. Then the massive shapes of Karn warships appeared from hyperspace. Dozens of them filled the dark sky above the colony. Their enormous hulls blocked the distant stars as they moved into formation. Below them, the human colony immediately detected the arrival. Emergency alarms echoed across the mining settlements. Civilians rushed toward underground shelters. Orbital defense stations activated, though everyone knew they were too small to stop a real invasion fleet. News of the attack quickly spread across nearby human systems. And not far away, a small human patrol fleet received the signal. 5 ships. Only 5. They immediately changed course and accelerated toward New Horizon. Back above the colony, the Karn fleet slowly surrounded the planet like predators circling wounded prey. Draxier watched the terrified human broadcasts being sent across open channels. He smiled. "This will be quick," he said. A Karn officer stepped forward. "Human patrol ships are approaching." Draxier laughed deeply. "How many?" 5 vessels, warlord." The entire bridge erupted with amusement. 5 ships against an entire Karn attack fleet was not a battle. It was an execution. Still, Draxier decided to allow the humans to arrive. Let the galaxy watch what happens when a weak species tries to defend itself. Minutes later, the human ships emerged from hyperspace. They moved into orbit above the colony, placing themselves directly between the Karn fleet and the planet below. Their ships were smaller. Sleeker. Built with practical designs rather than intimidation. To the Karn commanders, they looked insignificant. Draxier opened a communication channel. The image of a human captain appeared on the large holographic screen. His expression was calm. "You have entered human territory," the captain said. "Withdraw immediately." Draxier leaned forward. "Or what?" the warlord asked. The human captain did not raise his voice. "Or we will defend this colony." More laughter filled the Karn bridge. Draxier shook his head slowly. "You misunderstand the situation, human," he said. "You are already defeated." He gave a simple command. "Open fire." The Karn fleet unleashed its weapons. Brilliant beams of plasma and energy cannons streaked across space toward the human ships. But something strange happened. The human fleet did not charge forward. They did not scatter in panic. Instead, they began to move in a wide formation, creating distance between themselves and the Karn ships. To the Karn commanders, it looked like hesitation. Maybe even fear. Draxier smiled again. "They are trying to run." But the human ships were not running. Inside the lead cruiser, engineers were calmly preparing something along the spine of the vessel. A long armored section of the hull slowly opened. Inside it, powerful magnetic coils began to activate. Energy levels started rising. On the human bridge, the captain watched the enemy fleet moving closer. "Railgun systems?" he asked. An officer checked the readings. "Charging." Outside the ship, the long weapon aligned with the center of the Karn formation. The captain took one quiet breath. "Target their flagship," he said. The officer nodded. Target locked. Energy surged through the weapon. Magnetic fields roared to life. Across the battlefield, no alien sensors fully understood what was about to happen. The human captain gave the final order. "Fire." The moment the order was given, the human cruiser released its weapon. There was no bright flash. No glowing beam of energy. For a brief second, nothing seemed to happen at all. Then the railgun fired. Inside the long magnetic rails of the weapon, a dense metal slug was launched forward with unimaginable force. Powerful electromagnetic coils pushed it faster and faster, accelerating it to a speed most sensors in the galaxy could barely track. The projectile left the human cruiser and shot across space like a silent meteor. Most alien ships relied on detecting heat or energy signatures to track incoming attacks. But this weapon produced almost none. It was simply a piece of metal moving at terrifying speed. By the time Karn sensors realized something had been fired, it was already too late. The projectile slammed into the Karn flagship. The massive battleship was one of the most powerful vessels in the Dominion fleet. Layers of armor protected its hull. Energy shields surrounded it like an invisible wall. None of it mattered. The railgun slug hit with devastating kinetic force. The shields tried to stop it for a fraction of a second before collapsing instantly under the impact. The projectile punched through the thick armor plating like it was thin glass. It tore straight through the center of the ship. The slug exited the other side and continued flying into the darkness of space. But the damage inside the flagship had already begun. The projectile's impact created a violent shockwave through the internal structure of the ship. Compartments ruptured. Fuel lines exploded. Critical systems failed all at once. Within seconds, fires spread through the massive vessel. Then came the explosions. One after another. The Karn flagship split apart in a chain of violent blasts, scattering burning debris across the battlefield. In less than 5 seconds, the pride of the Karn Dominion fleet was gone. Destroyed by a single shot. For a moment, the entire battlefield fell silent. Even the Karn ships stopped firing. Across their fleet, stunned officers stared at the burning wreckage of their command ship drifting in space. They could not understand what had just happened. There had been no warning. No energy beam. No missile swarm. Just sudden destruction. On the human cruiser, the crew remained calm. Direct hit, one officer reported. The captain nodded slowly. Status of enemy fleet? Confused. Their formation is breaking. Across the Karn fleet, commanders scrambled to take control. The loss of the flagship had thrown the entire attack force into chaos. Some ships attempted to regroup. Others moved defensively. None of them had ever seen a weapon like this before. A Karn officer aboard another battleship finally shouted the question everyone was thinking. What destroyed the flagship? Sensor teams rushed to analyze the battlefield data. One scientist stared at the readings in disbelief. It was kinetic impact. The commander growled. Impossible. Nothing moves that fast. But the data was clear. Something had struck the flagship with such extreme velocity that its armor and shields had been meaningless. Before the Karn fleet could recover from the shock, another human cruiser slowly rotated its hull. Along its spine, another long magnetic rail began to glow faintly as power surged through it. Across the Karn fleet, sensors suddenly detected the growing magnetic field. Confusion turned into fear. The same scientist spoke again, his voice shaking. They are charging another shot. On the human bridge, the captain watched the scattered enemy formation. Next target, an officer asked. The captain looked at the largest Karn battleship still in formation. That one. Coordinates were entered. Magnetic coils screamed with energy. The weapon was ready again. Across the battlefield, Karn commanders finally understood what they were facing. A weapon they could not see. A weapon they could not block. A weapon that could destroy their largest ships in seconds. The human captain gave the command calmly. Fire. The second railgun fired. Again, there was no bright beam cutting across space. No warning sirens echoed through enemy ships. Only a small burst of force as the metal slug left the human cruiser at unimaginable speed. The projectile crossed the battlefield in less than a second. This time the target was a Karn heavy battleship moving near the center of their formation. The Karn crew had barely begun raising additional shield power when the impact came. The railgun slug struck the ship's forward hull. The kinetic energy was beyond anything the shields had been designed to stop. The protective barrier collapsed instantly. The metal projectile punched into the armored hull like a spear through thin ice. The entire front section of the battleship exploded outward. Internal compartments ruptured. A reactor chamber cracked open under the violent shockwave. Within seconds, a chain reaction began tearing the vessel apart. Flames and debris erupted from the massive warship as it slowly broke into burning fragments. 2 shots. 2 ships destroyed. Across the Karn fleet, panic began spreading. Command channels filled with confused voices. What weapon are they using? How are the shields failing? Why can we not detect the projectile? Sensor officers tried desperately to answer these questions, but the data only made the situation more frightening. The human weapon used no plasma. No energy beam. No missile guidance system. It was simply a dense piece of metal moving faster than anything their defenses were designed to stop. A Karn strategist finally spoke the truth that others were beginning to realize. It is kinetic. They are accelerating a projectile. Another officer stared at the numbers. At this velocity, the impact force is catastrophic. For the first time in many years, the Karn Dominion fleet faced something they did not understand. And it terrified them. Back on the human cruiser, the crew worked calmly. Engineers cooled the railgun systems while power was redirected for another shot. Enemy formation collapsing, the tactical officer reported. On the main screen, Karn ships were now moving erratically. Some attempted to spread out. Others began drifting away from the center of the battlefield. The captain observed quietly. They were expecting fear, he said. The communications officer nodded slightly. They were expecting surrender. The captain's eyes remained on the scattered enemy fleet. They were wrong. Across the battlefield, the Karn commanders struggled to regain control. Their fleet was large, but it had been designed to crush weaker opponents quickly. It was not prepared for sudden heavy losses from a weapon that struck without warning. One Karn warship attempted to charge toward the human fleet, hoping to close the distance and bring its powerful plasma cannons into range. But before it could reach firing distance, another human cruiser slowly aligned its hull. The long magnetic rails glowed faintly as energy surged once again. Karn sensors detected the magnetic spike. Fear spread across their command channels. They are charging again. Some ships attempted evasive maneuvers. Others turned their shields to maximum strength. None of it would matter. On the human bridge, the tactical officer confirmed the target. Enemy assault cruiser locked. The captain gave a simple nod. Fire. The railgun released another projectile. The metal slug tore across space and struck the attacking Karn vessel directly through its midsection. The ship split in half. Explosions ripped through its structure as the two burning sections drifted apart. Now the Karn fleet truly understood the danger. Every few seconds, another one of their ships could vanish. No warning. No defense. Just sudden destruction. Inside several Karn ships, commanders began issuing the unthinkable order. Retreat. For centuries the Karn Dominion had conquered system after system without fear. But today they had discovered something new. Humanity had not been weak. Humanity had been patient. And now the quiet species was showing the galaxy exactly what it had been hiding all along. More human ships were arriving from nearby systems. More railguns were beginning to charge. The Karn fleet realized that if they stayed any longer, there might not be a fleet left to escape. So the order spread quickly through their ranks. Withdraw from the system. For the first time in their history, the Karn Dominion was running from battle. And behind them, human railguns continued to aim. The Karn fleet began to retreat. One by one, their warships turned away from the battlefield and accelerated toward the edge of the system. Some ships were heavily damaged. Others moved quickly, desperate to escape before the next invisible strike arrived. Behind them, the human fleet held its position. Several railguns were still charged. Several targets were still locked. But the human captain did not give the order to fire again. Instead, he watched quietly as the remaining Karn ships fled into deep space. Enemy fleet exiting the system, the tactical officer reported. The captain nodded. Do not pursue. The order surprised a few crew members. The Karn Dominion had just attacked a civilian colony and destroyed several defense stations. Many officers expected the humans to chase them down and finish the fight. But humanity had never come to the stars to conquer. They had come to protect. Below the fleet, the planet New Horizons slowly came out of emergency lockdown. Civilians stepped out of shelters and looked up at the sky, where the burning wreckage of Karn ships drifted across orbit. News of the battle spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. Trade stations, military outposts, and council worlds all received the same shocking report. The Karn Dominion had attacked a human colony. And the human fleet had destroyed multiple Karn battleships within minutes. Using a weapon most of the galaxy had never taken seriously. Across dozens of star systems, analysts began studying the combat recordings. Military experts replayed the moment when the Karn flagship disappeared. Again. And again. Every time, the result was the same. A small metal projectile. Accelerated to incredible speed. Striking with devastating kinetic force. The calculations were simple. But the results were terrifying. One council scientist finally summarized the conclusion during a private military briefing. The humans weaponized physics. No energy beam could match that impact. No shield could stop that level of momentum. And worst of all, the weapon was simple to produce. Soon, the Galactic Council called an emergency meeting. Representatives from hundreds of species gathered once again inside the massive chamber where humanity had first been welcomed years earlier. But the atmosphere had changed. This time, no one whispered about humans being weak. No one joked about the quiet species. Instead, many delegates watched the human ambassador with new respect. The ambassador stepped forward calmly when it was his turn to speak. His voice was steady and clear. Humanity regrets that violence occurred, he began. Several alien representatives exchanged surprised looks. Regret? After destroying multiple Karn battleships? The ambassador continued. Our colony was attacked without warning. We responded to defend our people. He paused briefly. We do not seek war with any species. The chamber remained silent. Then he finished his statement with simple honesty. But if war is forced upon us, we will survive it. No threats. No boasting. Just a quiet truth. Across the galaxy, the message spread quickly. Human ships were not the most intimidating. Human armies were not the largest. But humanity had something the galaxy had underestimated. Creativity. Patience. And the ability to turn the simplest idea into a terrifying weapon. The Karn Dominion learned that lesson the hardest way. Their fleets would avoid human space from that day forward. Other empires became far more careful in their diplomacy. Trade with humanity increased. Alliances slowly formed. Because every species now understood something important. Humans preferred peace. They would cooperate. They would trade. They would even forgive. But they would never allow their people to be destroyed. And somewhere in the quiet shipyards of Earth and its colonies, human engineers continued building their warships. Long magnetic rails stretched across armored hulls. Power systems were upgraded. New calculations were tested. Because humanity knew something the rest of the galaxy had just begun to learn. Peace was worth protecting. And if the day ever came when another empire tried to test the quiet species again, the railguns would be ready. And the galaxy would hear their answer.